Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Folks, today is Wednesday, November 6, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Vice President Kamala Harris concedes the presidential election in a speech at Howard University. We'll show you what she had to say. Also, lots of questions are being asked about this campaign. What happened? How did 15 million fewer Democrats vote in this election? Also, will Democrats take control of the U.S. House, or Republicans have a clean sweep? In Jackson, Mississippi, the mayor there, Chokwe Lumumba, has been indicted by a federal grand jury. We'll tell you about that. Also, some other wins of African-American candidates across the country we'll talk about. Lots to unpack. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports
unlike Donald Trump 4 years ago, Vice President Kamala Harris conceded graciously when it came to losing the 2024 presidential election. She did so by making a phone call to Trump earlier today, and then she gave this speech a couple of hours ago at her alma mater, Howard University.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So let me say, and I love you back. And I love you back. So let me say, my heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up, and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran, and the way we ran it, Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. And loyalty to our conscience and to our God. My allegiance to all three is why I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up. I will never give up the fight for a future where Americans can pursue their dreams, ambitions, and aspirations, where the women of America have the freedom to make decisions about their own body and not have their government telling them what to do. We will never give up the fight to protect our schools and our streets from gun violence. And America, we will never give up the fight for our democracy, for the rule of law, for equal justice, and for the sacred idea that every one of us, no matter who we are or where we start out, has certain fundamental rights and freedoms that must be respected and upheld. And we will continue to wage this fight in the voting booth, in the courts, and in the public square. And we will also wage it in quieter ways, in how we live our lives, by treating one another with kindness and respect, by looking in the face of a stranger and seeing a neighbor, by always using our strength to lift people up, to fight for the dignity that all people deserve. The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it. It is always worth it. To the young people who are watching, it is, I love you. To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before. You have the capacity to do extraordinary good in the world. And so to everyone who is watching, do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together. Look, many of you know I started out as a prosecutor, and throughout my career, I saw people at some of the worst times in their lives. People who had suffered great harm and great pain. and yet found within themselves the strength and the courage and the resolve to take the stand, to take a stand, to fight for justice, to fight for themselves, to fight for others. So let their courage be our inspiration. Let their determination be our charge. And I'll close with this. There's an adage an historian once called a law of history, true of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. HU. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. I thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. I thank you all.
All right, folks, let's talk about this. Rebecca Carruthers, Vice President at Fair Election Center, joins us in studio. We'll be joined in a minute by Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show on Sirius XM Radio. L. Joy Williams, political strategist, host, producer of Sunday Civics on Sirius XM Radio. Tyler McMillan, Youth Director, Democratic National Committee out of Philly. All right, so let's get right into this. Rebecca, when we look at the breakdown here, we look at black voters. It seems black folks were the only ones who understood the assignment, who understood the danger of Donald Trump. And the rest of these folks, they basically decided that, hey, guess what? We knew who he was. We knew what he did last time. We know what he said. We want more of it.
You know, I think it's really interesting, especially as we're talking about black folks and their impact and their intersection with the Democratic Party. But one thing that I'm going to take a step back is it is now time for the Democratic Party reckoning. It's time for that civil war within the Democratic Party to happen. And, you know, as a black person, I'm going to eat popcorn as it's happening, but that reckoning must happen.
Well, absolutely. L. Joy, look, you have Democratic strategists who were utterly clueless. All of this talk about black males, and they completely missed what the hell was happening with Latinos. And they chose to focus on democracy, reproductive rights. That's what the election ended up being all about. We were told in the last, 3-4 days, independents and late deciders are breaking our way in huge numbers. That didn't manifest itself. So it was as if everything we were being told was utter nonsense.
It was similar to watching your feed. Is the same people repeating the same things to each other, but those of us who were in the streets and in the field could tell the difference of what was happening. Because we were hearing it on the doors, we were hearing it on the phones, and engaging with people out in the street on this issue.
And so, what? Were folks lying?
I think they were getting a feedback or a response. It's just the biofeedback, if you will, because that is the conversation that was happening on cable news, on social media. And if you are only campaigning to win the media cycle, then that's what will happen. But I think we need additional data and information to see specifically how this played out in the battleground states and how this played out in the streets. Once we get all of that information, for me, at least as a strategist, I need to see the data. I need to see the crosstabs. Like, I need to see all of that information in order to give a greater analysis. But I do think that there needs to be, as we look forward to future campaigning, how do we get out in the field early? Not from polls and certainly polls and MSNBC polls and things of that nature, but how do we as Democrats get out in the field earlier, or listen more to the people who are there, who are engaging, take that data and information and incorporate it into a campaign that works?
Reese, in the dinner that we had in November with the vice president, black male dinner, I said then, and I said this on the air too, I said that January to July should have been the White House, the campaign's complete focus on education, enlightenment, and informing folks of what they've accomplished and what they've done.
Yeah.
The vice president did some of that with the Economic Opportunity Tour, but it was only 5 stops. What I said was, it literally needed to be every week somewhere where they should have been engaging mayors, state representatives, state senators, city council members, and others, holding town hall conversations, targeting key demographics. I specifically said there should be these black discussions. I said, listen, our show should be on the road 6 to 8 cities a month doing the same thing. I said, you guys are going to be spending money on advertising. I said, so bottom line is, if you advertise on black-owned media, we can afford to do those things.
Yeah.
Those things didn't happen. And so it was like January, then February, then March, then April, then May. And so Labor had a big meeting on June 17th where they got in the campaign's ass. The campaign announced that they're going to spend $60 million with black-owned media, then grassroots. 10 days later, there was a debate. Everything freezes. He drops out July 21st. And so you get to August, and you're still waiting for those things to happen. And what I said was, the longer you wait, your runway grows shorter.
Yeah.
And you don't have the time to actually explain to people what you accomplished. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So,
which goes, I saw your video,
yeah.
which goes to how 14 to 15 million people they literally choose the couch.
Yeah. So the voter apathy is the biggest story of this election. And in the 106 days that Vice President Kamala Harris had to campaign, you can't solve voter apathy.
No.
The bottom line is...
That's built up over a period of time.
It is. She had too big of a hole to climb out of because, to be clear, we were losing, okay, with Biden. And
losing and was broke.
Yeah, we were losing. We didn't have any of the things that at least Vice President Kamala Harris did bring to the table, which, along with her being the nominee, brought exponentially more sexism and exponentially more racism. But this was not a winnable race with President Biden either. He could argue that he's the only person that beat Donald Trump. Yes, but what is he now, 80-something years old? 80-something-year-old Biden was 82-year-old Biden wasn't beating Trump. Sorry, he wasn't. He wasn't bringing the people out like that. But the reality is, and we've talked about this so much on your show, Roland, is Dems are outgunned in the information infrastructure.
Yeah.
You cannot beat 4 years, and on top of the prior 4 years of disinformation flooding our communities with influencers on TikTok. I'm glad that they engaged them, but you can't outgun them with organic content.
You also can't do it late.
You can't do it late. And you can't run against J6 Donald Trump. Donald Trump fucked up so bad that he was kicked out of office before we got to January 6th.
The most people in history came out to vote against Donald Trump. They should have ran against that Donald Trump.
Right.
How do you run against Donald Trump on democracy? Nobody gives a fuck. I said that. And people were like, I said, it's not about democracy, it's about citizenship. You have to make this personal. People only care about what impacts them. And so the fact that we hardly heard COVID in this entire election,
right.
The fact that we did not talk about—
Which caused inflation, which caused the economic crisis.
All of those things. The fact that we didn't hear Donald Trump fucked up the economy, which he did. Unemployment was 16% for black people and whatever the fuck it was for white people. The fact that that by the time Vice President Kamala Harris gets here and she decides to pivot a little bit, but the election still ran on the idea of democracy, was a losing battle. People don't give a shit about democracy, because I said it in January. Democracy is not something that a lot of people feel works for them, and then Republicans are equally as animated on the issue of democracy as Democrats are. So there's a lot of things that we have to talk about in terms of strategy, because we have 4 more years of this motherfucker now. But I will still stand 10 toes down on the idea that she left it all on the field.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if 15 million motherfuckers could sit up there and look at goddamn Donald Trump, and not just the 4 years that he was in office, that they said he got to go, but look at all of the times he's been indicted, he's been convicted, he's been convicted of civilly convicted of rape, and the most racist, xenophobic campaign, and go, whatever happens, happens. That's an indictment on this country, and that's an indictment on where we are, that people just stop giving a damn.
Tyler, when I look at numbers, when I look at numbers here, when I look at what the 1834 numbers, there were some assumptions that were being made. The assumptions were being made that, oh my goodness, once Gen Z and millennials, once they get engaged, oh my goodness, this is going to change. It's going to be a boon for Democrats. They voted big numbers for Donald Trump. From your perspective, what happened?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to say that the vice president and Governor Walz ran a hell of a campaign. The team ran a hell of a campaign. 106 days that we were on the ground. I firsthand saw the work that the team put into building coalitions, into being in spaces, and to being on campus. Shout out to all of our youth organizers and campus leaders who were on the ground, on campus every single day. I think at the there was a battle of folks fighting for rights and those fighting for privileges. And I think last night's election showed what America was willing to embrace. They were willing to embrace racism. They were willing to embrace misogyny. They were willing to embrace hatred. And I think that's what it showed. And I think clearly we saw how Black folks showed up in this election. Even overwhelmingly, even as we look at I was based here, helping running campus engagement across the state. The turnout amongst voters was massive compared to previous election cycles. But again, I think that before, not only were we fighting the fact of voter education and the fact of the accomplishments of the administration and what the vice president has done in her role, but we also were in a battle of simply hatred and division, and folks who just was not ready or thought that a woman, yet a qualified Black woman, was able to lead our country and to be respected amongst world leaders. But as I said before, it's a battle between hatred and joy.
But also, I get that point, but also, listen, I think when you start breaking down this election, it starts coming down to different pieces and chunks. And Rebecca, I think if Democrats make the point that it's solely racism and sexism, I think they are losing the argument. Yeah. I think you have to factor those things into in terms of what happened here. 2024 mirrors 2016, and you had Trump facing a woman, eminently qualified in both cases, and America still has not elected a female president. But you also have to factor in the reality that when you look at exit polling data, when you look at what folks have been talking about, they talked about the economy. Mm-hmm. You then have to, look, you've got Bernie Sanders out with this utterly ridiculous ass statement by saying Democrats have abandoned the working class, when you literally have the most pro-union administration in more than 50 years. Everything they claimed that they needed to pass or implement to help working class people. They actually did. So this idea that they haven't done it. So I don't know what the hell Bernie is talking about, like what more needs to be done. In his statement, he mentions health care, prescription drugs. Last I checked, those things were done.
Yeah.
Roland.
But hold on 1 second. But again, when you look at the economy, you have to look at the fact that they literally did not talk extensively about what they did, and they weren't messaging to the American people for the last 3.5 years, and you sort of wanted them to figure it out during the campaign season. That's not how it happens.
Well, with Bernie, first tell me, what is the original bill that Bernie has passed? Now, all this time that he's been in Congress, show me something he's actually introduced and passed. You know, that's the first thing. He's doing all this talk about, well, we need to talk about the working class. Then what have you done as a national leader? But we could move on and we could talk, even connecting it back to the youth vote. Up to the top issue for those who are 18 to 29 who cast their ballot this cycle was the economy. And that was 40%. That was their top issue by 40%. And a distant second was abortion. And that was at like 12, 13%.
Yep.
And so every demographic across the board, whether it's black men, black women, young people, it was the economy. And so what's also interesting, that 18 to 29 demographic, they really felt it during COVID. And so even to Reese's point, even to your point earlier, there was a story to tell on the economy.
Right.
That story was not told. It was an easy story to tell because all of us were locked up at home, and a lot of us were isolated. Even if we were locked up with other people, it was still a period of isolation. We understand that. Even at a visceral level, we know that.
Okay, let's look at 2017, 18, 19. Let's skip 20, 21, 22, and then 23, 24. Y'all suck. Let's go back. As if those 2 years didn't happen.
Even the COVID babies, they will remember what it was like not to be around other kids, only maybe a handful of adults. So all of us have experienced that together. And what's unfortunate is democracy in America is a group project. And I hate group projects for a reason.
Joy, you want to jump in?
Yeah, because, you know, one of the things that was mentioned is talking about the piece that the campaign focused on, whether it was joy, whether it was abortion, I agree with you, is something that should have came later as sort of galvanizing people at the end. And this is why I say that it is important to hear from people in the field who are on the doors, who are engaging people 365, who can tell you what people are experiencing. And you have to run a campaign based upon what you have to work with right now, not what you wish people would care about democracy. You have to work with what you have right now. And what Bernie is also demonstrating is the same thing that the folks who are voting for Trump experience, is that I don't care about what facts or whatever you tell me. I feel like the economy is worse. I feel like I'm being oppressed from LGBT and transgender. I feel this. And so you have to address people's feelings on those things. And then you can bring all of the, care about democracy and stuff later for the people, the small population of people who feel that thing, and get them off of the couch in order to motivate them. But you got to get to how people feel, because the country has shown us over and over again since we've been on these shores that things move based upon white people's feelings. And if they feel they are impressed, if they feel like they can't buy as many eggs as they could before, if they feel like a party is not speaking to their issues or things like that, they vote based upon that way.
Yep.
And I want to bring in Tiffany Lofton, of course, National Labor Education Organizer. Again, when we talk about those feelings, I also believe, Tiffany, that feelings are also dictated by the narrative that's being established. And so if I unpack this, early on in the Biden-Harris administration, the media was talking about how they were just smoking on fire, how we finally had some grown-ups who were in the White House, and how they were just enacting policy, doing the right things. And all of a sudden, Afghanistan happens. And then the right goes after him, approval ratings go down, and then attacking on the economy, and they never recover. And so the narrative was constantly, I remember, gas prices high, news media sends a reporter out to a gas station doing live shots, showing lines and how high was gas. But then when gas dropped to a 3-year low, where the live shot said, hey, gas is low. It's because we amplify certain things. Because of social media, people were saying, oh my God, they're looting these stores. This is crazy. So what did California do? California said, that petty crime misdemeanors, no, it's not gonna be a felony. It passed overwhelmingly. And so people were saying, no, crime is high, crime is high. Even the FBI saying, no, crime is going down. No, crime is high, crime is high. Because I'm seeing these things because it's also being amplified in a conservative media ecosystem. That also drives what people are feeling. And the reality is, Democrats, progressives do not have, the right can yell all they want to, Washington Post, New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, other networks. The reality is, progressive Democrats do not have a focused, concentrated media ecosystem the same way the right does with Fox News, conservative talk radio, and digital operations.
You know, you're right, and there's so many other examples of that. I'm thinking about just how this dance happened. First of all, hi, Uncle Roland. It's good to see you. Thank you for having me here. It's interesting to see this dance happen between what people are saying on social media and how they echo chamber what mass media says or what the Democratic Party says versus the inspection of that for social media to their own followers. I'm thinking about like this whole disinformation campaign that Obama had around black voters and black men. I'm thinking about, I think all the way back to, I still blame social media for the reason why Brett Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court Justice nominee, because we were talking about what happened to him in college and high school and not talking about how he wasn't qualified for the actual campaign. So there's multiple examples of that. But let me also say this as a suggestion to the party who's listening. I don't think that it was the wisest decision to have influencers and podcast conversations with Vice President Harris along this campaign trail. I don't think that it mobilized or organized people in the way that they thought it was going to do. And then two, to your point around the messaging for the agenda, the only agenda that I heard consistently this entire campaign for the 170 days that she ran was how terrible the other party was and the other candidate was. And, you know, I've been on your show a few times during this election cycle, and I talked about how that fear-mongering wasn't going to work. In the deficit of creating fear, and Joy just got finished talking about like how this aspirational vision around freedom and things came later, and maybe we should have talked about that much, much later into the campaign, after you get elected, and that being the spirit of what you wanted to run on. In that deficit, voters don't have an opportunity to fight for something or to organize around something or to vote for something. They are operating under the, we can't get Donald Trump to be president. And here we are, 4 million minus votes later, with Donald Trump as our presidency. And so the party didn't have, I think, a strong, one, they didn't learn from the lessons that we had in the last few election cycles about actually doing the work on the ground and moving people with agenda items and building a coalition with labor and community groups and faith. We had the support, but there was no agenda that was crafted in coalition with all of those folks. So I don't think she had enough time to do that. But we need a stronger agenda and not the fear-mongering and not the echo chamber of the media to say to voters, y'all needed to turn out because we didn't want Donald Trump. People wanted, what I've heard is that people wanted to turn out for something, not against something.
Well, that may work with Democrats, but obviously that works very well with Republicans in terms of, because Donald Trump was saying the country is trash, is garbage, is going to hell, only I can save it. But here's why I have to disagree on the influencers in the podcast piece. Because the game has totally changed. When you look at pure numbers, you take a Joe Rogan interview 11 days ago. On YouTube alone, 46 million views, not even including what's on radio. The reality is that consumers now, unlike any time before, you can talk about buying a newspaper or reading it on site, but when you get to watch television, you get to either be at home or at work, turn the television on, watch it. They now are downloading directly. So now, somebody literally posted this tweet a moment ago, and the person said, give me 1 second. The person said, if your media consumption is a Fox Morning Show, Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, Jordan Peterson, PragerU, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, right-wing memes on Reddit, Twitter, and Instagram, and your nightly consumption is Fox, you have no way of knowing anything good Dems do. The thing is, when you look at how the consultants even placed the vice president, they limited her with media. We know what they did with Biden.
Sure.
They did not flood the zone with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. One of the reasons he was picked because he was so good doing media. All of a sudden they abandoned that. But also what you don't have is you actually don't have a massive media ecosystem where you could communicate directly with your people. If you had to sit here and name, I would say your top 25 to 30 progressive / Democrat / whatever you want to call it, digital media platforms, they will pale in comparison to the right. So that the messaging piece is so critically important because you can bombard your followers with information that's either good or bad. Everything for 3.5 years, Reese, economy sucked. Horrible, 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 horrible. We would have a positive jobs report, and they would be like, shit, still horrible. And so it was this constant thing, and there were people who literally, even when stores started lowering their prices in the summer, folks were blaming the administration for that and not the companies. And so the echo chamber of constantly, let's say it's awful, folks bought into it.
Well, Uncle Roland, can I jump in front of Reese for a second? I just want to add one thing. I am not disagreeing that the echo chamber is significant in helping to move voters, because as a person who has knocked on doors, registered voters, called people in phone banks, et cetera, we know how important repetitive messaging is and how important influence is. My point is, now that the election is over for Kamala Harris in terms of her running for president, what's different about what I've seen you do and what I'm saying about influencers on social media and the train that I saw her do is that there's no way now to mobilize those people who were activated, who wanted to turn out to vote, to now take action after the election. There isn't a container. There isn't a mass way to communicate with them about what happens next. And there might be a consistent audience for that particular social media person, but a lot of those influencers, Roland, didn't touch politics before we got to Kamala Harris. And so their audience, I just sat on a panel.
So I'm not
those followers, and those followers said to me, I cannot continue to talk about politics because I lost my following, and people didn't want to listen to me talk about politics.
Right, but see that's why I'm not specifically talking about, frankly, what I call celebrity influencers, because so here's what I mean, because that ain't their thing, and so what I'm talking about is when I'm talking about how you have to have an ecosystem that drives the narrative, and just so people understand how basic this is, so we could take radio, we could take whatever. So you're sitting here right now, 7,300 are live. So let's see, Tylik, Joy, Tiffany. So it's 6 of us. 6 of us are communicating. Well, and that's just on YouTube. It's not Facebook, Twitch, or the platform. How long would it take for 6 of us to knock on 7,300 doors? So you have to utilize these tools now to be communicating every single day, every single thing, constantly, and not just in a 2 to 3 month window tied around the election.
Right. Well, this is where I will agree with Tiffany, because it's not about celebrity.
Right.
It's what I've always said, it's about credibility.
Yes.
And so what the Democratic Party has always done is they've looked for the celebrities and the numbers and said, let's just hop on that, as opposed to investing in an infrastructure of people who have credibility on these matters.
I know some celebrities who they had moderate discussions, and I'm watching their pages, and some took a week or 2 to post anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, why in the hell y'all invited them?
They were
like, ain't that the damn point?
It's not the point,
The point is you want them posting and...
But they have, the Democratic Party has a tendency to look at those of us who do this, who have credibility with our audiences, even if we don't have the millions and tens of millions of followers of the celebrity. But we do this and we help move the needle with engaged people. They have a tendency to look at us as the choir. And we don't have to preach to the choir. We don't have to go to their audiences because their audiences are already on board with us. That's a huge mistake that we need to correct going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler, I'll tell you, it was aggravating to me how long I had to wait to do an interview with the vice president.
Yeah.
I remember.
I mean, I was sitting here going,
what are y'all doing?
Okay, I'm seeing this and this and this. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And again,
I do have one more point to make, though.
Go ahead.
Oh, so the other point, though, is, but I do not want to get lost in all of this. The dissuasion campaign that was waged on our voters, because the #1 ad that Donald Trump ran was not on the economy. It was anti-trans. And so when you run ads on anti-trans positions, you run ads on whatever the hell else he was running ads on.
They got between the Kids campaign and the PAC, you got $120 million.
$120 million. So what that was about was making her unelectable. They didn't say, oh, she's too black, she out there talking about defund the police. They didn't say nothing about defund the police, none of that shit. They said she wants boys to play in girls' sports. And so while they do have in their ecosystem, he didn't even get, and we don't know what the final tally is, he did not get more votes in this election than he did in the prior election. He did not have to convert even one Biden voter to win, where he lost last time. But what they were very successful at was in dissuading people and getting people complacent. Look at what the Asians got. Oh, they sending all that money to Ukraine and they ain't got money for us. Meanwhile, they not giving your ass money either. If Donald Trump, he gonna get rid of the Department of Education, he gonna get rid of your motherfucking Affordable Care Act. Y'all instantly gonna go back up to $1,000. They didn't have to make any of those arguments. All they had to do was to hone in on the things that people can get distracted by to keep them at home, and it worked. So we can't just talk about what Republicans are ingesting without talking about the fact that we don't have an answer, and I didn't see an answer from the Democrats on the deluge that has been happening for years on disinformation, because they don't invest in those of us who actually have these conversations. They just want to swoop in a celebrity, which is fine to do, but you have to do that in addition to investing in the information.
So Tyler, here's where we stand. Trump wins, have inauguration. There's going to be always this autopsy, this sort of breakdown. Okay, where do we go right now?
Yeah.
Look, you're there with the DNC. We don't know if they're going to choose a new leader. Is it going to be Jamie Harrison or somebody else? From your perspective, what do you see? What do you want to be done?
What I want to be done, I think at heart, I think outside of this, when I first stepped into this work, I'm at heart an organizer and a worker coming from the civil rights space. And so I understand first and foremost that struggle is not new. Storms aren't new, but like, as the vice president said, we adjust and pull up our sleeves to get back to work. I think as alluded to my fellow panelists, it starts with community building. It continues with coalition building. It continues to have conversations in community about what the issues that matter to the issues that matter. Really to have a discussion of how we move forward, how we organize, how we're going to organize during this presidency. And again, for folks to step outside of fear and privilege. I think, as I said before, we were in a fight for folks protecting their own privileges rather than expanding the rights of all of us collectively. So we got to get back to the drawing board, how we organize, how we bring more young people to the conversation, to the table, how we having conversations within the different sectors as we look at the tabs of, where we lacked at. How do we step in and then also invest in these communities and ensure that these conversations just don't happen every 4 years? But how are we organizing, as you said before, of having town halls and having barbershop talks? How are we doing live streams and connecting with creators and folks, that this be a regular conversation and just not a every November conversation? And so it gets back to the ground roots of organizing, mobilizing, and getting back to the drawing board to really get to the nail of why we need to be involved in this moment, what's at stake, and really getting back to the basics.
Tiffany, you gotta go because you gotta catch a plane. So I want you to make your final comment before I go to Rebecca, then Joy. Go ahead.
I'm about to leave the country and go on vacation, Uncle Roland. So I said,
You always on vacation.
No, I'm not. I'm not over. I ain't been on vacation in about a year and a half. Look, where have I been?
I'm getting my passport.
Now you know you're gonna be doing some yoga headstand.
Watch me. Watch you.
Somewhere.
Friday morning.
Tiffany,
check
take
my
me
IG.
with you.
Thank you. Friday morning, check my IG, Uncle Roland, because you know I'm gonna be upside down on the beach somewhere. I'm not telling your followers where I'm going because I got stalkers, but I will tell you when I get back, and you'll see. And you know I was in the hospital for 6 days, so I deserve this break. So let me say this. I agree with my fellow panelists. And I want to add, there's so much to assess from this last campaign. I have a serious soft spot for the campaign that she just had to run because she didn't get the opportunity to run a full campaign from primaries until now. She didn't have the whole year. She had only 170 days, a couple of months to run her campaign. She was running as the vice president. She didn't get to run as president until the beginning of fall. That is not enough time. That is unfair, I think, for her to run a campaign. Yes, they said they ran a good one, but I know for sure if they would have had more time, we would have had a different conversation about assessing or critiquing the strategy that the team had to put this new woman in the position when Biden said that he wasn't going to move and he was going to continue to run. That being said, the ground game and the communications game. I live here now in Atlanta, Georgia. The messaging from grassroots organizations were incredible across the city. And I saw them all over the state of Georgia. Vote for Kamala, vote for Trump, vote for Kamala, vote for Trump, et cetera. I even saw this sign that was really interesting and a little offensive that said, Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for you. So it was all over. Every YouTube commercial I saw was a donation ad. Every text message I had came a couple times a day. So my recommendation that I have now is that they didn't talk to some of the folks here on the panel, including myself, about advice for strategy to move their people. They didn't start early enough communicating to voters. And I think there were some very poor choices about what type of voters they were going after and who their audience was when they were setting Vice President Harris up to speak on her campaign. And I think all of this is not just a lesson about how we do better, because we always get those lessons after every campaign. But really, Roland, the question I have, which I don't have an answer for, the question I have is, in the future, do we need to have a strategy on how to move white women? Or do we focus on the people, the 15 million people who didn't show up this time, and try to go after those folks? When I see these polls, and I know it's going to be evolving over the next couple of days, I know your face. I see you. But I think we have and I'm not saying it's our responsibility. My question again is, do we need to think about a strategy to move these white women, because all of them just voted against their interests and voted to oppress all of my people in my communities. And I don't understand these white women. I don't get them. They're like this foreign species that I'm trying to understand, because I'm like, how in the hell did y'all show up in the way that y'all showed up again for this elected official? And I hope your panel can talk about that, or somebody DM me and give me the answer later.
All right,
and I'm going out of the country, and I will see y'all in a week when I get back. Enjoy America.
Enjoy your vacation, and we'll look forward to seeing your yoga headstand on Instagram. The point she makes there, Rebecca, is this. When you look at suburban white women, Trump increases support there. It's not hard what the issues were. They played to the crime issue. They played to the immigration issue. Nothing scares a white woman to vote Republican more than to say crime is on the increase. And then you talk about, the encroachment of, look at all these illegals coming in and how they are hurting your babies. They play right into that. And so they fall for the okie doke.
Here's the thing, the way white women are socialized in this country, when they get uncomfortable, that's when they show up passive aggressive. So that's just a cheat code of how you manage to deal with white women. They are uncomfortable, they get passive aggressive. They're passive aggressive because they're experiencing discomfort and they don't know what to do with it. But I have a completely different thought than Tiffany. I think Black communities should focus on ourselves now. I think we ought to be selfish. And even in our selfishness as Black people, if Black people do well in this country, everybody does well. So it's not a rising tide lifts all boats. lift up Black people in this country, and this entire country would do well. So as Black folks, because we understand that, and oftentimes we're on the short end of that stick, we need to focus on ourselves. I've been reflecting and thinking more about Dr. King, talking about, is he getting the Black community to run towards a burning building? Did he really sell us did he really sell us I'm losing my words here.
A dream?
A dream. Did he sell us a dream? And yes, Reese.
He had a dream.
He had a dream, but we're living the nightmare. And so we actually need to be selfish. A lot of times we talk about the Black and Brown coalition, we talk about being BIPOC. I am Black. And one thing
I never even used BIPOC. I think BIPOC, Latinx, all them damn phrases, they drive me crazy. First of all, hold on tight. I'm gonna go to Joy. Joy, you've been waiting patiently. Go right ahead.
Yeah, now I got notes. So, so the first thing to Tiffany's point, and to others' point on a strategy for these white women, I agree that it's not selfishness, it's self-preservation. And I don't think that we need a strategy for that. They have to develop that on their own. And to Tiffany's point that I'll have to text her about later on her not understanding or knowing these white women, yes, you do. You do, because we've worked with them. We've worked alongside them. They've been our bosses. They've been our co-workers. They've been in different spaces where we've had to deal with their passive aggressiveness, deal with them siding in different ways from that nature. And to your point, Roland, and others, is that when they are uncomfortable, they will run to what they know and feel comfort in. This thing that anybody does, that any human being does. And what that comfort is under the shelter of white supremacy. And that's where they run to from that standpoint. I believe we don't have a strategy for them to try to woo people back, just like I don't believe in having a strategy to woo Republicans or woo independents, and that because the greatest population that we can persuade are those people who chose the couch. And how we persuade them, I know because I do it. How you persuade them is you give them something to vote for. You give them an agenda to vote for, which goes back to Tiffany's point, and that you're not just sowing fear and discomfort and vote against someone, but we're voting on this agenda that will increase your financial well-being, that will increase your healthcare, that will increase your child's education. Give them an agenda. And so for our organizations, the communication strategy that you're talking about in the narrative is that has to be from now, this post, election review, going into the midterms, and then preparing for redistricting, preparing for census and redistricting, going into that we are preparing people on an agenda of this is what we can gain when we build our political power in that way.
Okay, you talk about the agenda. So let me put this on the table because this is also what is perplexing me in a huge way. First of all, let's bring in Dr. Wes Bellamy, Chair of Advocacy for the 100 Black Men of America. Wes, glad to have you here. So I'm gonna put this out, and I want all of y'all to respond to this. So explain this to me. How does Missouri codify abortion rights in their constitution? How do they pass a living wage, but then re-elect Josh Hawley, who is against both of those things? How does Arizona do the same? I mean, when you look at some of these states, when you look at the choices that they made on the state level, but they re-elected individuals who are absolutely opposite those very things. And I saw there's one tweet, the person asked, okay, so Democrats now have to ask themselves, how do we lose big in Missouri, but they passed two things that Democrats supposedly are big on? Wes, your thoughts?
Racism. It's to me, I don't think that there's any other way to describe it. When I look at my daughter and I look at the ways in which people just voted, I'm very disheartened. But I also clearly understand that racism, in my personal opinion, is the biggest factor at play. There's no other way, in my personal opinion and personal estimation, to describe or to break down or to analyze what you just described for all of us. The major ballot initiatives passed in states like Missouri and Arizona. But nonetheless, those same voters couldn't go and find themselves or couldn't find it within themselves to vote for a black woman. Arguably the most qualified individual that we've seen run for presidency, a person who served on all three levels, a person who, by any accounts, was ready and prepared to lead this nation, a person going against a 34-count convicted felon. They couldn't find themselves to do it. And to me, I don't think that there's any other way or explanation other than pointing out blatant racism. And I think Democrats as a whole need to stop looking at developing and building out this quote-unquote tent and focus on those who have consistently been there for them, i.e. black folk. And let's try to run up those numbers and speak to our needs, because that's the only way this party is going to be saved, quote-unquote, for lack of a better term.
Reese?
I think that Republicans like to have their cake and eat it too. They like to have their power look a certain way, and then they like to have everybody else do the heavy lifting. In this case, they couldn't leave it to us to do the heavy lifting on things like abortion rights, even though it failed in Florida and legalizing marijuana. And the reality is that Republicans are reliable voters. And so I want to put to bed this notion of a voter realignment. I want to put to bed this notion of the demographics are shifting more Republican. He got the same Republican votes that he was always going to get.
Right.
But when we fall off, then now those percentages are higher.
Right.
So it's not that there's a surge of Latinos surging towards the Republicans. They always voted, those Latinos always voted for Republicans. The problem is the people who would be in our corner dropped off to the tune of 10 to 15. We don't know what the final number would be. So what we have to do.
First of all, figure out who the hell those $15 million are.
That's step number one.
That's first. Who the hell are they?
Step number one.
Are they black? Are they white? Are they young? Are they middle-aged? Are they old? Are they female?
They're a little bit of everybody. We have to figure out who is reaching them to the point that they stay their ass at home. We have to figure out what issues animate them.
But hold up. But this is, again, where I still struggle with this. Let's take Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
The Democrats are going to hold the Pennsylvania House.
Yeah.
All right? Mm-hmm. When you look at North Carolina, North Carolina, they elected 4 or 5 Dems statewide.
Yeah.
And the Democrats won enough seats to stop the supermajority in the legislature.
Yep.
But it didn't translate to the top of the ticket.
Yeah.
Why?
Roland, what did we tell people was at stake? What did Democrats tell people were at stake? The number one issue was abortion, right?
Okay.
And so if you're in places like New York, like other, as you mentioned, in Missouri, right, where you have fear and concern about the economy, but you also care about abortion, now here's a way, I can protect my abortion rights and still...
I can protect it on the state level and still...
Right.
and still vote for Trump.
Have a cake and eat it too.
So I would disagree.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I got you.
And so being able, it's in terms of that agenda of what we are telling people. So what we are telling people.
So Democrats kept thinking, they kept saying, because abortion is going to be on the state ballot, hey, that's going to help us. When actually it didn't, because it passed on the state level.
Not federally.
Right, I'm
Not
saying.
federally.
Right, it passed on the state level.
statewide.
It helped you there, but it didn't help you in the presidential race.
Yep.
So one thing that I noticed that Democrats are oftentimes looking for a cheat code. So they thought by having abortion on the ballot, that's a cheat code because then people are going to just vote down the ballot.
Right.
We also understand when it came to going to barbershops, if a Democrat shows up to another barbershop or beauty salon, like black people do more than get our hair done.
I can't tell
We do more than haircuts.
But that's the reason why when you ask the question where those 15 million are, right? We have to dig deeper into what our society is. And again, I'm not talking about other people because I don't know about other people's community. I know black people. And organizing and engaging in my community, I know that there's decline in the institutions of our community, right? So those 15 million people, when we talk about opportunity youth who are disconnected from a job, from school, from a church, from a community institution, from an NAACP, for any of those things, right? Those 15 million people are disconnected from any of those institutions that are already engaged and mobilized and can move people and talk to them on a regular basis. We don't talk. NAACP does not talk, and I'm talking wholesale, I'm not talking about Brooklyn because we a different thing. But they do not talk to those 15 million people. Our institutions do not, right? And particularly after COVID, when we're talking about faith-based institutions and others who are still struggling to get people back into the pews and into their institutions, they are disconnected. So your point about being selfish, again, I would use a different word in terms of self-preservation. We have to dig down deep into our communities, and we have more opportunity to grow and develop with those people that are choosing couch and are not engaged, and not just engaging them come a presidential election.
Rebecca, then I'm going to go to Tylik.
And the other thing
I'm going to go Rebecca, Tylik, West. Go.
The other thing I want to point out with Missouri, I also think when it comes to abortion, this is also about abortion tourism. There is money in that. Because when you think about all the people who are traveling to Illinois to get an abortion,
right.
When you think about those who travel to Kansas, think about the states that surround Missouri. You have Oklahoma, you have Arkansas, you have Tennessee, you have a portion of Mississippi. Kind of. You have a small little sliver, it's close, even parts of Mississippi. So when you think about those who have to travel, even going as far as down to Texas, there is money in that. And the thing I know about Missouri, not Missouri, is they're the show me state. They care about money. They've legalized marijuana because this is about money. And so that's something we also have to think about is we are still in a capitalistic country. And then we know it is undergirded by white supremacy, but these white people want to make money.
Well, speaking on the money part, Tylik, listen, when you look at 1834, great concern when it came to student loan debt, when it comes to housing, things along those lines. So now the question that's on the table is, okay, for those of y'all who voted for Trump, what are you gonna do? Because he ain't have plans, he had concepts. Tylik, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it goes back again of the fact that people are choosing privileges over their rights. I think clearly, as we think about, we had a conversation before about how the vice president could have stressed, the issues that matter to folks, and I will argue that she did. She talked about the fact of home ownership and the fact of putting down a down payment to create equity for your family. She talked about creating small businesses and giving folks a head start to starting the business. She talked about child tax credits to give folks, more money as they're starting families. So I think she had those conversations with voters, but for somehow folks did not resonate or pick up on the policy stances that she stood for, but rather folks cared about the privileges of I was talking about white supremacy and racism. We can't get around it. And I think those were the main issues. And I, as even pointed out before, I think it's surprising to me that we see states like North Carolina that elect Democratic governors, but yet we are losing the overall vote when it comes to the presidency of the vice president, or even states like Pennsylvania where governors like Shapiro are leading the state. And so I think it's rather confusing to me, but I think it only justifies the fact of how we must really get into community to get those folks off the couch for the many of folks who did not even show up at all, and how we really connect and resonate with those voters first and foremost. And even as Dr. West pointed out, staying true to the voters that have been consistent to this party, which has been Black folks. Because as we said before, as when Black people win, America wins. And so we must stand hold to that first and foremost.
But Wes, here's the reality that I keep saying. 2016, 2020, 70% of the electorate was white. And so my greatest fear, my greatest concern was, could Harris hold the white demo, the numbers that Biden got? That was the issue there. And so we could talk about Obama in terms of how he did and how that touched people, but as someone said last night, that's a unicorn. you have to look at this reality that when we talk about whiteness, we're talking about culture. And so Tyler just listed all of these things the vice president laid out. But it's abundantly clear the voters didn't give a shit about policy.
No.
Right.
They didn't give a damn about policy.
Right.
They didn't, I mean, again, of the black folks that voted for Trump, where's the policy? In fact, all of these ADOs, ADOS, FBA people, all these folks who out here, all the loudmouths on YouTube, I need any of them to show me Trump's black agenda. It don't exist. So what you're dealing with here is, again, I remember people kept talking about vibes with Harris. I think they voted for Trump on vibes.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I vote for Trump and I'm gonna feel better and stuff is just gonna magically happen. It's gonna get better. And what's all he's gonna end up doing is literally taking credit for all of the hard work. Biden and Harris will end up being sharecroppers to Donald Trump because he will take credit for all of the work they put in to fix the economy the same way he did with Obama.
The foundational stuff. So this is my point. And some may agree, some may not agree. I was having a conversation with some folks earlier. I really think that the Democratic Party needs to look at the bench and the individuals who are going to run moving forward. And as sexist as this world is, this country, this nation is, as racist as this country and this nation is, we got to be very candid and honest with ourselves that people, as you alluded to, most individuals, in my personal opinion, they're not voting for policy. They are voting for vibes. So the party is going to have to present an individual who, while you said Obama was a unicorn, I like to think that there are a multitude of individuals who can kind of fill and fall into that realm. Governor Wes Moore is one of which. I think that white culture and whiteness will respect him due to his military background. From a just quite honest a sexism and a chauvinistic perspective, there are going to be men who, quote unquote, say, yeah, I can vibe with that dude. There are going to be white women who often fetishize about black men, and they're going to say they think he's handsome. Like, Democrats are going to have to put forth individuals who not only energize and invigorate within our community to go out and say, I identify with this individual, they're cool, I can see myself identifying with them, like I want to be like them. And that's what the common person, in my personal opinion, are voting for now. Because as you alluded to, Trump has no policies. But people are caring less about policy and they're caring more so about popularity. And I think that we have Democratic Party has persons who fit that mold. We just got to present them.
I think what happens now, Reese, again, if we're talking about in terms of, the bottom line is going to be there. The first thing is, Lord Jesus, pray that Democrats win the House. Now, look, it's tough. You've got about 20 races still outstanding, but you pray they can get the 218 because that then stops a MAGA agenda from, I mean, he can do executive action,
and
but
the judges.
But right, he can do that. But I'm saying, but legislative, it has to go through the House.
Yeah.
So you pray for that.
Yeah.
But also, I think where Democrats are now is, first, who's going to lead the party, and now, what is going to be that strategy to focus on the 2026 midterms?
Yeah.
Also, state races. You've got state races in Virginia next year. So when Joe was talking about redistricting, you gotta say, yo, how do you knock down some of these supermajorities so you have a say when redistricting comes around at the end of the decade?
Yeah.
That's there. I think you have that. Also, you also have to figure out a communication strategy, meaning also communicators. So what he just said, question now becomes, okay, who are going to be those folks? We saw Gavin Newsom a whole lot between January and July. When Vice President Kamala Harris gets the nomination, it was like he disappeared.
He did.
All those Fox News appearances, what happened? I don't know if it was the campaign's call or if that was his call. To Wes's point, I said even last year that if Biden Harris ran this year and they lost, that there was no doubt in my mind Wes Moore was a #1 in 2028.
Yeah.
Because I've seen him. It's this very weird thing in terms of just how some people. How can somebody communicate with regular, ordinary folk, with rich folk, and so some folk have it, some folk don't.
Yeah.
So now the question then becomes, the party's not going to position him.
No.
But how does he position it? Because you're going to need those external voices targeting the administration and the policies and getting people focused and interested.
Yeah. Well, first, let me say, I don't want to attach Governor Wes Moore to the notion that we can't elect a woman, because he, in and of himself, is a sensational politician, exceptionally talented. He has all of the intangibles, and then he has the benefit of being a governor of a Democratic state where we just elected a black woman senator who he was behind in the primaries. And so I don't want to attach him to that. I think that he has his own merits on his own record and his credentials. I agree with you on the point of communicators, but I think the #1 thing, to your point, is communication and information is we have to develop a counter strategy. In your chat right now, Roland, I noticed, even though they won, there are all of these chaos agents, these Trump supporters, these fake FBA ADOS people who are relentlessly, everything that comes out of our mouth, they're countering in this chat, and they're amplifying Donald Trump. So even though they won, they're not lighting up on their communication strategy, because they understand that this is a cumulative impact of making sure that their narrative is the winning narrative. And so Democrats have to attack all of the conversations we have with the same level of discipline and relentlessness that Republicans are showing. That, to me, is the very first step, is being as relentless and as devoted to countering what the Republicans do. Now, I thought they did a pretty decent job during the Trump era of having their press conferences and pointing out all the bad stuff that Republicans were doing, but they didn't point out all the bad shit they were doing while Biden and Harris were in office. And so they have to not let up this election, for the remainder of the Biden-Harris administration, and they have to invest in the same things that the Republicans have invested in. If they do that, then we have a fighting chance with Wes or with whoever else will be the nominee in 2028.
Rebecca?
You know what's really interesting, Reese? I was also reading the comments. I see a lot of the FBA and ADOS. Yep. And you know what? By any account, I am FBA and ADOS. My family has been in this country for centuries. We have survived for centuries. And what's always interesting is whether it's Tariq or Yvette and they're doing their discussions and they're talking about tangibles or lineage, how are we going to make decisions? And even with thinking about the concept of reparations, that still goes back to the economy. Right? Because we're now talking about personal economy. We're talking about things that are owed to those of us who are descendants of people who have built this country. But even still, what's also kind of weird for me, though, is even seeing the bots or the people with misinformation saying, oh, we should just burn the whole thing down. When has that ever, if you are ADOS or FBA, when has it ever been a Black American ideology of just burn all this down?
Yeah.
My family built this. And you tell me to burn down everything my family built? No, I'm going to take it over because it's mine anyway.
Well, but here's what's interesting, though, because, Joy, part of this whole deal is the folk who, guys, get Khalil mic'd up, please. The folks who voted for Trump, they want to burn this down.
Oh, yeah.
They want to burn this down. And see, and that's the thing that I think we have to recognize. We're dealing with people who, Trump appeals to them with this whole idea of, oh yeah, we're gonna gut this whole system. I'm gonna bring RFK Jr. and we're gonna gut all of this sort of stuff. I'm gonna bring, Elon Musk is gonna just go through all of government and we're gonna just gut it. And people are like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then, of course, when that hurricane hits North Carolina and South Carolina and Florida, they're like, oh, my God, where's FEMA? Oh, my God, where are you? No. Well, what do you mean we're out of money? Yeah. And so, again, When shit hits the fan, Joy, now it's going to be like, okay, where's government? But now let's gut everything. It's like, all right, let me know how that works.
Because what's at the root of this is that let's go back to this Make America Great thing, is going back to a time period when the functional government of this country was only focused on the needs and the desires of wealthy white men. That's it. Right? Because it's eventually like, so getting rid of these extra protections and you having equity and getting rid of the bloated government that provides support for everybody else, this socialist government that provides support for people that should pull themselves up by their bootstraps, in this, sort of American lie of how people were able to build on their own without the help of anybody else or any other entity. That is, all of that is centered around going back to a time frame where an Elon Musk, where a Donald Trump, where all of these quote unquote titans of industry, right, could rape and pillage a country and it benefit them and only them and not provide for anybody else. And the people who are not themselves wealthy, aspiring to be those people. Because again, we've created this narrative as Americans. This is the American narrative, right? Just think about the people that we hold up as titans of industry, the corporations, the others in terms of building, and to the our co-panelists' point in terms of capitalism, we've built that up as America wholesale. And so even if you're not that, that is my dream and desire. My dream and desire is to conquer somebody else. My dream and desire is to go to that point. And so I want to strip away anything that anybody else can have. But if I'm in trouble because I'm either that white male that that aspires to be like that or is like that, no, send FEMA for me. Send resources for me and my community, but not for anybody else. And, Roland, just to speak on that point, being out in the streets and talking to Black communities here in New York City, and that narrative that we all talk about people feeling like people that are coming to this country, asylum seekers or others, are getting something that they're getting more than anybody else, or things that are being taken from us and given to them. And I use for an example to a brother.
Khalil, come on over here, Khalil. Y'all just bring a chair with you. Just come on. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I used a brother on the street, and I don't remember the stat right now, but I told him about the percentage of people, particularly Black people in New York City, who qualify for the public assistance that they believe that all of these asylum seekers and others are getting, but don't apply because they don't want it, they don't need it or whatever. So I was like, the things that you're talking about that other people are getting, there are people who qualify right now that they need to go and fill it out and they can get,
right,
but they won't do it, right? So who is taking it from you?
I'm gonna tell you right now, Ty. I'm telling you right now, folk had better adopt my phrase. We tried to tell you, because again, it ain't gonna take us long to see the destructive path that Donald Trump and his administration plans to implement. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a lot of orange tears from a lot of people when they go, shit, he did that. And we're going to say, fool, they told you they were going to do that. And I just think a lot of these people, and I want Tyler and West to respond to this, a lot of these people act like he never said this stuff. You already got conservatives going, oh yeah, we all gonna do Project 2025. They were lying the whole time. And we all knew they were lying. And these fools actually believed the lie. Tyler, go ahead.
We talk about how we feel safe in our communities. He has already come out and said he's giving police officers full immunity. Like, what does that do for us? When we talk about the fact of even on the first day, we talked about the Latino vote. He says on day one he's doing mass deportation. So it's just like, folks literally are voting against their interests, but it's going to be a huge wake-up call on day one of what's really at stake. Because I say all the time, we're in the fight of our lives right now, and I just really hope that folks don't become comfortable or complacent in their day-to-day lives. And I know we can get to these elections, and the day after we want to fall back into our own personal lives and our day-to-days, but I challenge folks to not become comfortable or complacent because there's so much at stake. And we stand on the shoulders of sheroes and heroes who have fought tooth and nail for us to be even on this platform right now, having this conversation, this dialogue, for us to just give up and allow him to take back all of our gains that we have made. And so it's going to be a huge wake-up call. And not only is it going to be a told you so, but it's going to be I hope it is an alarm clock for folks to say, like, we don't got room to be messing around right now.
Wes?
I think it's twofold. The whole comment that have been made. In some regard, I think it's going to take an individual like Trump to show Latino folk who believe that they're white adjacent that they're not, through his actions and not just his words. They didn't believe it when he was shooting paper towels in Puerto Rico. They didn't believe it when it seemed as if like he allowed this individual to call there's a floating piece of trash in the ocean. But forward, he's going to show them with this mass deportation, with reminding them that they are black and brown, with the enabling of nationwide stop and frisk, qualified immunity, and other policies that he's already, again, said that he's going to do. When minority serving institutions, which large in part, Hispanics as well as HBCUs lose their Pell Grant funding, and the Department of Education is dismantled, and Latino schools or heavily Latino schools lose their Title I funding, as well as very white elementary and middle schools lose their Title I funding. It's not until something dire like that happens for many of these white and, again, white adjacent folks are going to understand.
Yeah.
And we just have to persevere.
Yeah, I listen, I said last night, and I still believe it. They gonna have to experience some shit.
Yeah.
And what's gonna happen, and I'm gonna go ahead and say this, and I know some folks might think it's cruel, but that particular moment when folks start getting deported and they're gonna be looking around for help, this gonna be wrong. And then when Trump sends even more weapons to Netanyahu, and they start carpet bombing to the people in Dearborn, Michigan, this could be my position.
But Roland.
And then, no. Let me explain why. Because when Rebecca said it, and I talked about it last night, when Dr. King talked about walking my people into a burning house, everybody else always wants us to play the fireman. We sounded the alarm in this election. We yelled, hollered, and screamed in this election. We tried to tell people, we tried to warn them, but folk decided, you know what? Hey, y'all gonna do what y'all gonna do. Sometimes you gotta let folk experience getting their ass whooped before you step in. Now I know some may disagree with that, but there are some people who are gonna have to get taught a lesson that there are consequences to your vote. And I never forget, 1984, Reagan just destroyed Walter Mondale. Mondale won one state, Minnesota. And all them white boys and white girls, college Republicans, boy, they were out there, ooh, Reagan, 4 more years. Damn near 3 weeks later, his ass slashed Pell Grants and student loans. Them same white boys and white girls were shedding tears. And I remember sitting there Hell, I was in, ninth grade, watching news with my dad like, bet y'all ass saying something different right now. You have to let some folks see evil in action. Now, I'm going to go biblical. Somebody hit me earlier today, and they said, man, how do you explain what happened? I said 1 Samuel 8. God freed the folk from Egypt, from Pharaoh. Now, here they are, and they like, Samuel, we need a king. He's like, y'all good with God? No, we need a king. We want a king. God's like, all right, I'm going to give y'all a king. Samuel, go ahead. He told Saul. Saul was evil as hell. He's like, oh, my Lord, Saul's our king. God's like, y'all wanted a king. America said last night, we want a king. We want a dictator. We don't care about the convictions. We don't care about the felonies. We don't care about the porn star. We don't care about him stealing the classified papers. We don't care about January 6th. We don't care about him lying. We don't care about him fudging his records. We don't care about him owing all these cities $10 million. We don't care if he's going to pardon January 6th. They said, we don't care about none of that stuff because Donald Trump's our guy and he going to make America great again. Okay, when he jack your ass up, this is how Black America should respond. How you feeling now?
Well, let me say this. I will not be silent in the face of injustice, regardless of what people voted for. Excuse me. But I will not put my labor and my body on the line because this is what people chose.
Right.
Period.
You need some water?
I do. Can I have that one?
I'm about to drink the damn water, y'all. That was your water?
My bad.
It was sitting there too damn long. It was sitting there like an hour. So I was like, well, maybe that ain't Rebecca's. I'm going to drink it.
Help us out. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Can y'all bring 2 waters, please?
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Hold on. Reese is going to finish your point.
No.
You're going to Joy.
No,
I was giving her some space. Go ahead.
All I want to say is that we cannot let up. This goes back to, again, we cannot be complacent. We have to be relentless and we have to be disciplined about calling out this shit so that next time, okay, now you motherfuckers learn. Remember, you thought it was a game, now you learn. But the reality is that everybody went into this election clear-eyed.
Right.
When Trump won in 2016, he didn't win the popular vote.
Right.
Oh, he gonna probably be more liberal than Hillary. Hillary is a hawk, and she's a da-da-da-da.
Right.
And so maybe I can forgive you first time, shame on you, but second time, shame on me.
Oh, and they were open real clear.
They were very clear. And so what happens next, we're clear. And we're gonna make it clear that this is what you asked for, and we're gonna make it clear that you didn't have to make this choice.
Right.
We're gonna make it clear come 2026 and 2028, make a different fucking choice if you don't like what's happening.
Right. Go ahead, Joy, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to agree with Reese that I'm not going to remain silent because I'm not going to let them change who I am, right? And so who I am is someone who is going to call out the injustice and push back against it with all I can. And I'm going to continue to do that. So I'm not going to let that change in that instance. The thing that I do believe, and I will be solely focused on, is whether it's in the form of this political party or others, is how do we build that infrastructure for Black communities to build that Black agenda, that whoever is chosen in this party infrastructure, that we have a greater say-so and a greater hand in moving this and moving an agenda and setting up the infrastructure in order to insulate Black communities.
Khalil Thompson, Women with Black Men Executive Director. So I'm going to specifically say this to you, ask this to you, Tylik and Wes. At call we did 55,000 Black men. Women with Black Women, organized in 20, they've been doing Sunday calls every single week.
Mm-hmm.
What's next for Women with Black Men? There was a 1-point increase with Black men. I've been saying since 2012 that there has to be a very specific strategy to speak to invest in, to communicate with Black men. What does that look like post-election?
First of all, thank you for having me here, Roland. Always happy to be here tonight. I think what's most important is that we need to focus on the numbers and the data and then have a conversation with black men after this. As you said, only a 1-point difference in increase for the Republican vote that black men win. 77% of black men voted for Kamala Harris. Like, there's not like a big gap in this. There wasn't a monumental shift that changed.
Only thing's difference is we were always a number 2 voter.
Yes.
This time, number 3 was black women, Jewish women, and black men.
Very true. But I mean, again, we haven't seen a chasm that really popped up out of nowhere, and we've been holding this down at the top of the top 2 behind black women for decades and for years. I want to start having a conversation about where were Latino men, where were white women who were high school educated, why aren't we having more of a conversation around them? Once we do that, I think a roadshow where we start talking to black men in barbershops, as we continue to do, what are policies that you believe are going to be better for you now?
I don't want to go to the barbershop. But okay. I'm sick. I don't. I want to go. The only barbershop that I'll do is G's in Milwaukee, because it can hold 200 people, and because I think it's now turned into a trope. Black men are communicating in other places, and so I say, look, let's do something in some community centers. Let's actually it's just driving me crazy.
So if we take away the moniker,
I got you. Go ahead.
What we want to do is go to brothers and say, look, you have an opinion for why you either didn't support Kamala, you weren't hearing something in the Democratic Party right now, maybe something you didn't hear or you wanted to hear in the Republican Party. Whatever that is, let's make that scorecard. Let's see what happens in the first 100 days. If you wanted this administration to deliver on you, great. Then let's see what they deliver on. And if they don't, okay, well then what are you asking for? What is it that you really want from a policy agenda? And let's start having that conversation now in December of 2024, in January and February and March of 2025. And so I think that's the first step. Then from there, we need to tell donors, we appreciate what you gave to Kamala Harris's campaign, but there are organizations out here, not only like Women, Black Men, Women, Black Women, and others that are doing the work in our communities. We know many of them on the ground in Michigan and Pennsylvania that need direct funding. I think a lot of our frustrations, we understand donors wanting to get on the board and show her and show Governor Walz that they were supporting their campaign, but that final hour took vital funding from grassroots organizations that needed it. I mean, we were on text chains where offices were asking us to donate money to make sure volunteers could get pizza.
Can we get 5, 10 grand? Which is why, and it was it was my idea when I said no, we ain't giving all that money to the campaign. We gonna keep some of that money. And there were some people who got an attitude, and I was like, I don't give a shit about your attitude. And we were able to at least take almost $500,000 and give it directly to black male groups that were on the ground. And it was 146 across the country that applied for the money.
Right.
And so you saw the demand that was there.
Yep.
I know Black Voters Matter had a $3 million deficit that they should have gotten. And so those PACs were not sending them money, but you want to turn people out. The reason I asked that question in terms of what's next, Wes, is because what I don't want brothers to do, and every place I go, I say this, and it's all the time. What I say is the election is the end of one process, is the beginning of another. Mm-hmm. So, election's over, okay? The candidate we wanted didn't win. We're still constituents. Mm-hmm. So the question now, Wes, is from a black male perspective, what pressure are we now applying to who's in charge? Mm-hmm. How are we then holding them accountable and then calling them out? I see some of the folk who are I see some of these black dudes who are gloating today. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, all right, you gloating. Where your damn plan? Mm. Yeah. Since you're talking all this shit about the vice president, where's your plan? Again, this is that moment where we have to challenge loudmouths to say, okay, you supposedly pro-black, you supposedly all that. Where's your plan since you were like, oh, well, they didn't do this and didn't do that? So how do you see this black male movement continuing post this election?
I think in twofold. One, we have to be intentional about how do we communicate. I'm not talking about the brothers who already have the 6-figure jobs or the brothers who are already a part of, and no disrespect intended, but who are part of some of our Divine Nine organizations or the Boulay, or who may already have reached a certain status. I think there has to be some intentionality with us specifically going to the block and not the barbershop, but I'm talking about the block and having conversations with brothers. First of all, us not being afraid to have conversations with our brothers.
Right.
May not present in a certain way, or who may not articulate themselves in a certain way, or who may show up in a certain way. We have to be intentional with having conversations with them about how they become engaged in the political process. I love Khalil, and I agree with Khalil's point in terms of us allocating resources. But I only push back a little bit, and that's my man. I only push back a little bit in the sense of brothers told us what they wanted. Like they were very candid, at least in the 27 stops that the 100 Black men did across the country. And I'm sure you heard this as well, Roland and Khalil, like as y'all were going across the country, brothers told us what their high level issues were. But it seems as if while a portion of those issues were created, or excuse me, presented within the Vice President Harris's black male agenda, on the state and local level, having those issues presented is still very far-fetched. And it's going to have to be for us to encourage them to show up at their city council meetings, at their school board meetings, at the state house. But that means that there has to be some intentionality with education and then consistency with the groups who already have trust on the ground. When I look at like groups like the New Era Project in Detroit and Brother Zeke, who some folks didn't necessarily want to engage with because they thought, for whatever reason, his persona and the way he presents himself may be a little different, but he has the streets. Like, as those groups that need to be funded in order for us to be able to build up our brothers, get them engaged, and then I think we'll see the long-term impact. But this is, as you alluded to, it's a marathon. And that consistency, I feel like, is missing in many regards. And ain't nobody else gonna do it but us. So Roland, I'm looking forward to us having our talk, me, you, Khalil, Quentin, Wakari, and whoever else. And we get in our group chat and we talk about how we gonna go and hit the block to engage with brothers who, again, are feeling like either I can sit this out or I may do identify with Trump. Shoot, give him a chance because I'm tired of hearing what everybody else got to say.
Tyler.
Yeah, I would, double down on that as well. But I will also say how we are keeping the dollars circulated within our community. How are we raising the dollars? How are we going back to these funders and saying these inner city organizations and folks who aren't necessarily connected to the establishment can have access to this money? How are we funding organizations that continue to teach Black history to our kids? How are we providing funds to those organizations who are educating? As we talk about Trump trying to eliminate Head Start, how are we giving money to these organizations who are providing scholarships to students who are attending historically Black colleges and universities when we know that Pell Grants are under attack? How are we providing funding to organizations that's helping women who are bleeding out in the streets when they need emergency medical care because of the fact of abortion bans in certain states? And so how are we circulating the dollar and going back to our fundraisers and our folks who gave the big dollars to say, how can we circulate that money within community and provide, as Dr. Bellamy said, folks that are in the streets, these organizations who are not your regular go-to organizations, but folks who are actually plugged into communities and giving them the dollars that it takes to help folks change folks' mindsets. Because I've saw throughout the trail and visiting different organizations, folks aren't just necessarily engaged in our everyday organization, but folks are connected to grassroots community organizations, whether that's through their local, basketball gym or their coaches or, different avenues. So how are we providing funding to those folks who are really in community, doing that grassroots community building and really giving them the resources?
So go ahead, Khalil.
But it doesn't just stop there. I think there's also an accountability that has to happen. I'm not talking about individuals, but we saw a campaign that could have been monumental in this election cycle. We got away from what works in our communities. Not only are we persuasion, but then we need to be mobilized to go vote. We were seeing that our communities were not being spoken to. In Philadelphia alone, I heard that there were close to 240-some thousand voters in wards and precincts that just didn't come out and vote because people didn't have a chance to knock on their door.
That was a 10% drop-off in Philadelphia, and Detroit only hit 47% of turnout.
And so if we're asking, we then need to go to the campaign.
Trump increased his turnout in Detroit by 53%. So he went from 6,700 votes in Detroit to about 19,000 in Detroit.
And I love media. I will always be here at the Black Star Network. I think we got to find unique ways to reach people, but that can't be done at the sacrifice for having a conversation at somebody's door, picking up the phone and calling them early on in the campaign. So I challenge everybody. I'm just like you. This afternoon, I'm like, great. I love that you got the presidency. Awesome. I love that you got the Senate, and I hope you get the House, in my opinion. I want you to have no roadblocks to get your agenda in, because then there is no question at the end of the day. I know. Bear with me, because there's no question at the end of the day when we go back to our brothers and ask, if you have all of these systems in place and you couldn't enact or you couldn't get the financial assistance that you wanted or the policies that you wanted, well, then tell me what you really wanted at the end of the day. Do I really believe that mass deportations are actually going to happen? I don't think it will. I know my daughter and I are taking it. I know he scared us. Maybe I'm a little crazy.
There's money in it. So yes, all this stuff is going to happen.
But I feel like once we start doing it, average Americans who don't want to take those jobs that are in the Sun Belt to go pick that food and it's going to be on your grocery store, those prices are going to go sky high. I think things are going to come back to the opposite.
No, so then so this scheme is you keep incentivizing people to cross the border, work here, being paid under the table. Then you mass deport them because someone's going to make money off of it. Mm-hmm. Then corporations are going to go back to Mexico City with their billboards, recruiting people to show up to Billings, Montana to do this work. It is a cycle because there's money attached to it.
So you said something about accountability. And when Wes talked about traveling and, brothers were saying what they wanted. Okay, now to those brothers, what you gonna do now?
Maybe that was my point. Forgive me.
See, to those brothers. Because see, when I traveled and when I specifically asked brothers, they couldn't tell me.
There you go.
They were talking about, well, I want to be heard. I was like, oh, okay.
I'm listening.
What? We're here.
Yeah.
What do you? I was like, I know the campaign's watching. What do? They couldn't. And so now, again, and I threw it out there, I can't wait. I really can't now wait. All the ADOS and the FBA folks who talk shit about Democrats and the Vice President and Biden, okay, now what y'all gonna do? Please, all y'all folk who said, well, if they stand up for reparations, I'm voting. Okay, show me where Trump and the Republican Senate and the possible Republican House, where they stand on that. Now what you gonna do? See, this is where it's put up a shut up time. So it's a lot of people who've been running their mouths, saying all sorts of stuff, what they gonna do, what they want. You need to have this, you need to have that. Okay, now what you gonna do? That's why when I said I'm gonna sit back and look at some folks, because we're always the ones who are organizing, moving, all right, let's go stand with you. No, this is right now, Joy, I'm gonna need some other people to get off their ass and lead the march. I'm gonna need some other people to sit here and say, we about to oppose this thing because we've been carrying a whole bunch of other people. And they showed their ass on election day. And it's like, okay, now what y'all gonna do? I mean, I've had more folk, I've been seeing a bunch of people say, look, don't y'all start blaming Latinos for what happened. Shit, our numbers didn't look like theirs.
Right.
This man insulted Puerto Ricans, left it, and they still voted for him?
But not every Latino identifies with the plight of Puerto Rico.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, he insulted Puerto Ricans. He made it clear he's going to do mass deportation. He called folks rapists and criminals. He said they're crazy, they sin the worst, they are poisoning our blood. So he said a whole lot. And all these people kind of like,
he ain't talking about me.
That ain't me.
He ain't talking about me.
To their perspective, they're not talking about them.
Yeah.
Because, whether it's people who have identified that they've been here for, 2 generations, they're talking about them. My hairdresser, who is Afro-Latino, would be talking to me, But the last time I went to her, which has been some time now, but last time I went to her, and she was like, "Oh, they're all coming over here," and I'm like, "Girl, are you really sitting here and talking about other people coming over here and taking? You're like, are you doing this right now? Okay, I can't see you no more, right?" So like that again, people believing that it's not them, that they're not talking about them. The other thing I think is that people don't have a real grasp in terms of the diversity of who Latinos are in this country as well. What white supremacy and others has done to people in Latin America and also here in the United States, that people don't identify in that way, and how they are socialized, how from race, from gender, from everything is different based upon where you come from. And I think people do that wholesale Latino thing, but Latinos don't themselves.
I mean, Joe, you brought up, like, there was a battleground state, I can't remember which one, where a group of Republican voters were pro-Trump and they were advocating for deportations and rounding people up. And then there was a gentleman who worked at a store who they all went to and shopped with, and then he got arrested and was deported. And they couldn't imagine, well, he was one of ours. He was one of our immigrants that we loved. And then they didn't realize what the policy would. So to your point, Roland, I'm just gonna sit back. Y'all wanted this. This is what you voted for. I'm gonna advocate for our communities. We're gonna hold them accountable for what we want. But this is your administration. This is what y'all wanted. Enjoy it.
I said we are waiting to see for a lot of these House races to be decided. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. Of course, Republicans had 220 seats in the last Congress. Democrats had 212, and so some went one way, some went the other way. We also talked about some of the critical elections. You look at some of the state elections. There were some Supreme Court pickups that also took place. Democrats now control the Supreme Court in Michigan. We saw what the Republicans did with redistricting commission in Ohio, how they purposely screwed that language up. That's one of the reasons why it went down. Hopefully the people there will try to get it back on the ballot. I think what people need to understand, and this will be our final point here, and Joe, I'll start with you. What they need to understand is last night happened because the election, the populace went this way.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Facts are facts. When the populace goes this way, Republicans win. When it contracts, when it expands, then Democrats likely win. I'm saying Republicans and Democrats because I'm also looking at agenda policies that speak to our interest. And so, you've got state elections coming up. You got midterms coming up in 2026. Jamie Harrison, according to Reuters, has made it clear he's not running for DNC chair. So the question now comes in, who then will be DNC chair? Joy, I'll throw it out to you. Is there a name or what type of person do you think the DNC needs to lead them over the next couple of years? Or really over the next 4 years?
Right. You need someone who is focused on building infrastructure, number one. And that is building infrastructure in the states and really digging down deep into the numbers and the state entities that we have and what they need. Some need additional funding. Some are not only fighting back against their own selves within a party structure, but then also we're fighting against Republicans. So everybody is going to need something different. And you need to focus on building that infrastructure that you talked about, not only from a national standpoint, the communication structure, the organizers, the communicators, all of the stuff that you've talked before, but also how are you building infrastructure in key states? And also someone who has the foresight to build an infrastructure that is inclusive of the base and the people that you want to grow into. And lastly, I would say someone who has the spine enough to push back against the funders and the donors who always want to go with what they know and what they are comfortable in funding. Because that is another piece of particularly in the Democratic Party, right, is that people are going to follow what is getting funded. And if they can grow a spine and put forth a plan and agenda to build the infrastructure that's necessary, and then tell donors and others, this is our path forward, this is what we need, and this is what we need to fund in order to grow this party, in order to win back, not only going into the midterms, but going, like I said, looking forward to redistricting, right? Like, this is an all hands on deck and being forward thinking and not just being on the defensive for the next 4 years.
Rishi.
I was hoping you were going to be next. You know, I think to El Joy's point, infrastructure, but I would say emphasizing information infrastructure as well. I've said it a million times, so I'm a broken record, but we cannot organically win a war on information that is invested in to the tune of $1 billion. We cannot win a war with people just saying things out of conviction. We have to cultivate our side. And so we could talk about a Roland, but Roland does not have the resources as much as he has the reach and as much as he has the credibility.
We done made a whole lot with little.
What exactly? So we always on a shoestring budget, and we always clawing and finding our way to something, and everybody else is swimming in cash. And so we have to invest in the information infrastructure. I think we have to get creative. Or I should say, we have to be a little bit less squeamish about people who don't necessarily look like the people who people should be listening to Dr. West's point that he made earlier. Not everybody is going to be straight-laced and whatever, you know. But you gotta open up the door to people who don't always communicate in the way that people are that the Democratic Party always feels comfortable with. And then there is one other point I had. It's slipping off, but it's going to come back to me. So come back around to me. But there was one other thing I really, really wanted to say, but I have to think about it.
Khalil?
An organizer. Someone who can get with all of the coalitions in this big tent party, bring them together. I think Howard Dean's 50-state strategy was critical and important. We need to find organizers in the Democratic Party that can go, as LaJoy said, at a state, local, and municipal precinct level and dig deep. We don't need you necessarily to be on the ground, but we need you to work with the groups that are on the ground already doing the work and amplify their work on a national level. Then we need to talk about resources. I love that we invest in media, but I am sure we paid for certain people's white media, certain people's third and fourth Nantucket homes of the billions of dollars that were raised on this campaign. I am frustrated that more Black-owned, and by Black-owned, because I saw this article, I don't mean a equity partner that's of a white-owned firm. I mean a Black-owned business that pays for the EIN and the taxes at the end of the year, that does the 990 themselves, and it is Black-owned. They're receiving that funding and those resources to build and build capacity. And so having somebody that is chair, that is an organizer, that has budgetary autonomy and authority, and then can do true leadership in our community, I think that's where Jamie Harrison was hamstrung over his tenure.
Rebecca.
I said this earlier, I think the Democratic Party needs to have a civil war. There is no new leader, there is no path forward until you actually fight for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party. The person who should lead the Democratic Party should be someone who has skin in the game. They actually have a personal, they actually have a personal stake connected to the outcome of what happens. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who raise money, make money off the Democratic Party. They're going to be fine. But I also want to pivot slightly. For Black folks, I'm more concerned about what Black folks should be doing, less with the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party was created by white people for white people. We happen to be using, the Black people as a collective happen to be using the Democratic Party now, because compared to where the Republican Party is now, Democratic Party seems like the party that it is easier to have those negotiations with versus this current Republican Party, even though 50 years ago it looked different. Black folks were able to negotiate with the Republicans. So saying all that, I think for those who are going to organize within Black communities, for Black folks, stop going on the Democratic Party banner and using the Democratic Party as shorthand. Just like I said, Democrats are lazy when they want to go to the beauty shops, they want to go to the barber shops, even though a lot of the beauty and barber shops are different now. You go in suites now. It's no longer this big community shop the way it used to be. But saying that,
mine come here to cut my hair.
Well, see,
no, I'm just saying. No, what I'm saying is that, I mean,
yeah, it's different.
You got barbers now who have mobile units. It's
yes.
just, we're living in a different environment.
Yes, so people have to keep up. So I think with organizing Black communities, if you're organizing within our communities and you're Black, you have to lead on issues, talk about topics, then connect the dots with how things work, how civics work, for people to understand it. You have to show impact. You have to lead with issues and impact to daily life. Instead of saying, oh, well, it's the Democrats, vote blue no matter who. No, I will not. I will skip that line. You know, the other thing is I was talking to an organizer who's much younger than me, and he was actually asking me about the role of AI. I thought that was interesting, the role of AI in organizing, because right now with a lot of political work, you see AI being used in fundraising. So what does it look like to add AI to organizing? Because earlier we talked about the old school way of organizing looks different. We're still doing that civil rights model. So what does it look like, especially as Gen Z is starting to age? They're 12 to 27 years old. So now the 18 to 27-year-olds can now vote. So what does it look like for us to use technology and use a sense of Afrofuturism in how we organize?
I did remember my last
Tyler?
I think he's gone. Oh, he's there.
Tyler? Yeah, definitely. I would echo the same sentiments that was said before. I would say on the progressive ideas that the party has, we have to stand the line on where we put our values at, and not being afraid to be progressive thought leaders and sticking to the point. As we clearly see the other side sticks to their point, we must do the same. As you said, holding the funders accountable, of not being afraid to tether the line, but being unapologetic about our progressive values and our voter bloc. We understand that young voters, Gen Z and millennial voters are the new voter bloc, and the mindsets of how we feel about different issues and progressive issues is much different than other generations. And so we can't be afraid to say what we stand for, to make folks feel comfortable.
I remember my last point.
Go ahead.
So the last thing I wanted to really say is that, and I'm not saying that this applies to Jamie Harrison, but when we're talking about going forward, we need somebody who can rid the party of this elitist attitude, this dismissiveness of large swaths of the voters, and dismissiveness about what is moving the needle with people that we need to bring out to the ballot box. I mean, there were a lot of things that went unanswered this election cycle. There are a lot of disinformation talking points, dissatisfaction with funding for Ukraine, for instance, dissatisfaction with immigration, dissatisfaction with trans. And I don't think we should throw trans people under the bus, but my point is that we need people who have their finger on the pulse and who will answer to the things that are bubbling up, instead of being like, well, we're just gonna have message discipline and we're gonna focus on these things and that stuff ain't gonna matter at the end of the day. No, it all matters. And so that is one of the biggest parts. And when we're talking about Black people specifically, Rebecca, I want somebody who understands that just going to the Divine Nine and HBCUs and Black churches does not cover all of the Black people that we need to reach. I mean, I had an event, and I'm not trying to brag, but 650 sold out Black people, and somebody made a remark and they shouted out the Divine Nine, and people had, woo, that was 10% of the group.
Yes.
Okay, what about the other 600 people there? And so, you know, you have to reach every person. And there's, you know, we're gonna be like, yeah, y'all, what's up? We're gonna big up you, but at the end of the day, Black people are no more monolithic than Latinos are. There are Black Latinos. And so we need people who understand that you have to do more to reach more of us, and you have to pay attention to the things that people might think are stupid that somebody's listening to. That's dumb if they believe that, but they are. So what are we gonna do about it? And we have 4 years that we need to start today And not even, we have 4 to 2028, but 2 to the midterms, and next year for Virginia, where we need to start moving the needle on the things that the Republicans have had a 6-year head start on moving the needle with our voters and getting them dissuaded and getting them to choose the couch.
So I'll say this here. I think the next leader of the Democratic National Committee has to come in with a big-ass trash can. I think the next leader of the Democratic National Committee has to make it clear that there are consultants and folks under contract who should be given their walking papers. Because the advice and the counsel that was given was shameful. The DNC, even though the DNC chair cannot control PACs, Future Forward needs to get called out. How are you the designated PAC for the campaign? And I travel this country, and I was in battleground states, and I was watching television and listening to radio, and y'all supposedly were running stuff. It was amazing how I didn't see it. But I saw lots of Make America Great Again PAC and Trump campaign commercials. So I think that's one. 2, you've got to have a leader who can communicate in the streets and the suites. You've got to have somebody who is aggressive enough to go on media outlets, and not just MSNBC, but showing your ass up to this show, to Sirius XM radio shows, going to other digital shows and podcasts, and actually having a media strategy.
Yeah.
It means hiring a team to put back together the black political infrastructure that was obliterated when Obama was president. That has to happen as well. And you also have got to have a DNC, and that's the DNC. Republicans are going to control the Senate. Democrats, Chuck Schumer cannot be the minority leader.
Oh, yeah.
I don't give a damn how much money Chuck Schumer can raise. Chuck Schumer no longer can be the Democrat minority leader in the United States Senate. His time is done.
Yep.
On the House side, I don't want to see Nancy Pelosi's ass again on television doing interviews. It's time for you to go. Hakeem Jeffries is not. If Democrats regain the House, he becomes the majority. He becomes Speaker of the House. If Republicans control it, he's the minority leader. Nancy, it's time for you to go home to your husband. No. No, I'm saying that for a reason. Because you have to understand, you cannot continue to have 75, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82-year-old people laying out your strategy when you're trying to reach demos, and when Nancy goes and she don't do black media, because she damn sure didn't do black media when I asked for speaker. But she'll hop on MSNBC show, and thank goodness we ain't gonna see on Andrea Mitchell, because Andrea Mitchell tired ass done with her show. I'm saying this because you cannot put new wine in old wineskins. You cannot have these folks who are still trying to use a playbook that's 20, 25 years old, when literally what is facing us is totally different.
That's true.
It simply cannot happen. And this is also the moment where the Congressional Black Caucus has to truly wield its power and put some of your fellow Democrats' asses in line. You are the largest caucus in the Democratic Party. You should be setting the agenda. You should be leading the fight. And then we start talking about all of these different groups, CBC PAC, and all these other PACs and groups. What the hell are y'all gonna be funding? Politico dropped the story, somebody leaked it, that the CBC offered up a $10 million proposal to the Harris campaign to do a bus tour and to help out, invest in 2 groups to help these various House races. It wasn't the Harris' campaign job to help you win House races. That's what you were supposed to do. And the campaign turned it down, but let me be as real clear as possible. A CBC bus tour ain't it, y'all. What the CBC should have been saying is, send that $10 million to Black Voters Matter, to New Georgia, to Georgia Stand Up. Send to the actual groups that are on the ground. Because the data don't lie. Y'all, numbers ran. Michigan, as of right now, and again, what did I say? Detroit, 47% turnout. Oh, my God. She lost Michigan by 81,750 votes. Pennsylvania, I told y'all, 10% drop off in Philadelphia. Some say that comes out to be about 250,000 votes. She lost Pennsylvania by 130,487 votes. Wisconsin. What did I tell y'all what happened in 2022? 50,000 fewer people voted in Milwaukee than they did in 2020. If those 50,000 people in Milwaukee vote in 2022, Mandela Barnes is the United States Senator because Mandela Barnes lost Wisconsin by 26,000 votes. Right now, Kamala Harris is losing Wisconsin by 29,634 votes.
That's UW.
Nevada, down 63,114. So if you look at Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, folks, we're talking 3 states, 250,000 votes. There's 250,000 votes. That's the difference between being president and going back to California. 15 million people sat out. The next chair of the DNC needs to put the map on the wall and needs to say, city by city, what the turnout was. And then they should go, first of all, state by state, then go county by county, city by city, and then specifically for us, go, I need to see the precincts in Milwaukee. I need to see the precincts in Philadelphia. I need to see the precincts in Charlotte. Oh, but speaking of North Carolina, damn it, can y'all please stop going to Western North Carolina? Do y'all understand that since 2020, the VP made about 18 trips to North Carolina?
Yeah.
1 to Eastern North Carolina. That was a county, I think it's Anson County, North Carolina, that's 40% black. Trump won that county. How? Y'all, this is math.
Yeah.
So if I'm going through the data, I'm in search of votes. And now I'm saying the data is showing who did not show up. And now I'm creating conversations and coffees and dialogues and whatever kind of sessions in those places because I'm preparing for 2026. I can tell you what Speaker Don Scott in Virginia is already doing. I can guarantee you, Don ain't waiting until the fall for the elections in Virginia. I guarantee you, there are going to be conversations happening in January, in February, in March, in April, in the critical House districts about what they've accomplished in Virginia since Democrats took control of the House. They're not going to wait till the end of the year. Lastly, and I love somebody sitting and talking about Roland trying to figure it out. I ain't trying to figure it out. Hell, I've been trying to tell y'all this shit for the last year. This ain't nothing new.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what the next leader has to do. And the last point of the next Democratic leader, you're going to have to be willing to actually challenge some of your own people with their white paternalism and maternalism. The next leader of the Democratic Party is going to have to challenge white Democratic donors who would rather hand the money to white operatives instead of black people. Yeah, that's real. And so, we know what's going to happen with Trump. Oh, by the way, there were 2 or 3 people reached out. They wanted Brother Speaker MLK Day. That was the inauguration. Obviously, I will not be in this son of a bitch on January 20th.
Right.
So,
Or January 6th.
what black people need to be doing, is go through the grieving period, take your time, be pissed off, but come Monday, and I give you till Monday. Come Monday, it's time to go to work. Because that evil son of a bitch will be doing evil stuff.
Yeah.
And we better be prepared to swing back and take their ass out in 2026. I'm gonna be pulling the data to see which Senate races are happening. Because they probably gonna have so Slotnick won in Michigan.
Oh, good.
I saw one piece. Well,
she pulled it off?
Yeah, she pulled it off. Rosen may lose in Nevada, depending upon because they're still accounting ballots. Casey's lost in Pennsylvania. Sherrod Brown's lost in Ohio. And so.
What about Tester? He lost.
Tester lost. So they may. Yeah, so they may have a 55-45 margin in the United States Senate. Okay.
26 is tough too. That's a tough map too.
So 26.
Georgia?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned Georgia. So let me just go ahead and say this. I spent 5 weeks on the ground helping Warnock and Ossoff get elected. Ossoff has not come on this show one time. And I have personally said to him 3 different times that they're not coming on. And I said also, you got my number, right? He does. Now, I told his staff in 21 and 22 and 23 and 24, yeah, it's gonna be running for re-election in 26. And let me remind Ossoff's staff, Warnock ain't on the ballot this time. You're gonna have to wait. You barely won last time. So let me just be real clear to these white Democratic senators and House members. Y'all gonna need black folks. Ossoff, you gonna need black votes. I would advise you and your staff to come talk to black people and don't come holler in 2026. Because we've been trying, and you know it. Because not only has my producer been emailing your staff, I personally spoke to you 3 separate times. I ain't got a problem putting it out there publicly. Just saying. Folks, and let me say this here, and for the person who's named Tone Blue, he's thirsty for guests. Your mama disagrees. All right, y'all. That's it for us on today's show. Support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Send your check and money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV, and be sure to get my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. If y'all want to understand what happened last night, read the book, because I called it out and laid it out 2 years ago that this was going to actually be happening. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here on the Black Star Network. Holla! Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?